Kharid is often the second or third city a new player will visit when starting their RuneScape journey. In the last series, I built a scale model of the iconic town of Lumbridge, and you guys voted that I continue modeling southeast of the desert, so in this series I will be building and attaching a 1:192 scale model of Kharid. I determined this scale during the last series by assuming that my character in-game was approximately 6 feet tall, and then using him as a way to measure the buildings and find the size of a tile, which I determined to be 4 feet by 4 feet. I then wanted to scale this down to a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch tile on the actual model, hence the 1:192 scale. This model will be 72 tiles wide and 80 tiles long. This will allow the model to be attached to the Lumbridge model and will encompass the main part of the city while keeping the model to a manageable size. In this episode, I will be explaining the modeling process, and I will not be delving too much into the lore just yet, as I will be covering more when I actually start building the city. So go ahead and grab a Slayer task or find something to AFK while you watch. I cut the base out of some 1-inch thick XPF foam off camera, approximately 18 inches wide and 20 inches long, then began marking out a 1/4 inch grid. This model will encompass a total of 5,760 tiles. I wasn't originally going to make it quite this big, but many of you wanted me to attach it to the Lumbridge model I made in the previous series. With the grid drawn, I began marking out the layout of the town using a drawing I made on some engineering paper several weeks ago. This is the only desert city open to non-members, and unlike the rest of the desert, Kharid is not affected by the desert heat mechanic, so players don't need a water skin or any other water source in their inventory to enjoy this town. I took some more XPF foam and made the hill that the palace sits on. While you could theoretically carve the hill out, it's usually easier just to add more foam, especially for a small hill like this. I didn't really have a good way of recording this part, but I took the base outside and flipped it upside down, then waved a lighter around to create some variations in the terrain. This will help sell the idea of wind-swept mounds of sand. I also burned in the 2 ponds in the river Lum. Taking some 2-part epoxy, imaginatively called green stuff, I filled in the seam around the hill to help blend in the transition. I mixed up some matte Mod Podge, acrylic paint, and sand to make a textured paste that I applied to the areas that will later be covered in grass. I again mixed up some matte Mod Podge, acrylic paint, and a lot of sand to make the desert sand paste. This ends up being pretty see-through, but that's alright, as I'm really just trying to add texture to the model at this point. I went ahead and sprinkled some more sand on after everything was coated, being careful to avoid the pathways. I put a coat of gray on all the pathways I marked out earlier. I had to go back over these sections several times off camera to cover up the grid. Once the paint had dried, I used a painting technique called dry brushing to give the sand some highlights and to help make the dunes stand out a little better. If you've seen any of my videos up to this point, you'll know that I've explained dry brushing in about every conceivable way, but you're essentially dusting a light amount of brighter and brighter shades onto a piece so that only the raised sections get painted. I then painted the riverbed with what I thought was the same blues that I painted the river Lum with on the Lumbridge model. This is a static grass applicator. It helps to make the grass stand up on end when applying it by grounding the piece and charging the grass fibers. Static grass is typically made from finely chopped nylon fibers that are dyed to mimic natural grass. You can get it in various greens, yellows, and browns. There are even several options out there for neon pinks and blues if you're trying to make some fantasy or science fiction flora. With the grass applied and the riverbed painted, I made a little adjustment to the shoreline to better match the game. I mixed a small amount of 2-part epoxy and gave it a slight teal tint before carefully pouring it into the ponds and river.
Hello there. You probably don't know my voice. I've been editing all the videos in the background. I had a few requests to upload the raw footage of an episode, so I will link the raw footage in the description box.
I then took a lighter and quickly passed it over the epoxy to help pop any bubbles that floated to the surface. I usually use a barbecue style lighter for this, as these small ones will toast your fingers a bit when you angle them down like this, but I couldn't find mine, so I had to make do with what I had. Once the epoxy had fully dried, I took some gloss Mod Podge and covered both the ponds and the river in a healthy coat before taking a straw and blowing air onto it to make a rippling effect. It looks terrible at the moment, but after just a few hours it will dry clear and create an awesome rippling water effect. First part of this series is complete. You may have noticed at this point that the rivers are not the same color. Unfortunately, I did not realize that I had used different blues to paint the riverbed until after I had poured the epoxy. Luckily, when it is hanging on the wall, it's not nearly as noticeable as it is outside. This is a great learning opportunity though. If you plan on making a model that will attach to other sections or multiple models that are meant to be part of the same miniature world, it would be a good idea to keep a little notebook and write down what colors you used on the dirt, trees, roofs, rivers, etc. If you enjoyed the episode and want to see the city of Kharid grow, all the while learning the interesting lore surrounding this desert city, go ahead and like and subscribe. If this is your first time seeing the channel, then make sure and check out my previous series where I built a scale model of the iconic town of Lumbridge. Thanks for watching.